Welcome to the Business Blocks podcast. I'm Chris Manser.
Dale from Tax for You, aka Business Blocks, aka Little Royals.
What do you got for us?
The announcement of Job Seeker. What's the new one? Seeker?
JobMaker.
JobMaker, that's the one. That is the new and improved program. So there were a couple announcements on JobKeeper. They are keeping JobKeeper, or it looks like they're going to keep JobKeeper all the way through to September. They said that you need to use the money wisely, much like what we said. So I think they've been watching the podcast, and that there will be more targeted spending that will come, and that sort of leads into the JobMaker program. The early announcements, so there was the Prime Minister came on the TV today, and he said that it's going to be jobs focused. So they're bringing, one point I thought was interesting, he says they're trying to bring unions and businesses together because they need businesses to survive, which is sort of an indication that they want people to negotiate better or lower wage conditions for most people, just in order to get the most amount of jobs through to the most amount of people. He did have one small dig at the union, sort of saying that they should come to the party. There was also announcements regarding education, but not large institutions, smaller skilled-based learning programs, which he says that was going to be the next reason, the next place the money was going to go. He also said that the money wasn't going to be spent ineffectively. They've learnt from their mistakes previously, and they're going to try and make things more effective, in that the programs that do get rolled out need to be done for jobs shortages, and somehow this is all going to tie together with the single touch payroll system. So it was a nothing announcement, in the fact that there was no concrete dollars that was announced. It was just an indication that we need to start working together. He didn't want to weigh in to the negotiations pool on saying what they wanted the outcomes to be. He said that should be something that the employees and the employers work out together. They were looking to try and reduce legal tape around the way that the business is done, so make things easier to get through, quicker, and all that sort of stuff. But as far as actual detail, not a lot, nothing really. Just sir, yes, sir. It was a good speech. I enjoyed it. I thought it was it did sort of pull the troops together. So, it was good from that, but no facts, no figures, no dollars. Did we talk about interest-free loans in the last one?
No, we haven't spoken about interest-free loans.
There's been a further tightening of borrowing policies that's going to get rolled out by the banks. Not announced by the RBA, but the central governing body of the banks, that they need to reduce their exposure to interest-only loans. Some figures that I saw kicked around was that there's about 30% of all loans are interest-free loans. So they're going to start to kick to principal and interest when they run out on their term, because they won't be renewed into a new arrangement. And most of those arrangements are usually 12-month arrangements or around about that. So they're not a long-term borrowing option. That's going to mean that there's going to be a bunch of people who are going to have repayments almost double. So I think it's a 40% increase. 40%? Yeah, so it's almost double. So it's about an 80% increase in the amount that you've got to pay towards your loan every month, week, fortnight, whatever you do. So that's going to be interesting in how that rolls through the system and the pressure that it puts on people. There has been one large closure. It was the car company. Who am I thinking about? Hertz. So Hertz has put their hand up, a very old company, been around for a lot of years, and said that they've had enough. So I think it's starting to, yeah, things are starting to bite at the moment, and it's probably going to be one of many. The government say to everyone, we need to negotiate, both employees and employers. It's about working together. These are his actual words: working together from what's best for the business, because that will that means that everyone has a job. Now, skeptics are going to say Liberal government pushing it through for the big business, but I do feel that he is trying to push it through to get the best for everybody.
Yeah. Well, if the businesses survive, there's jobs and there's no need for subsidies to continue or handouts from the government.
Won't continue. So, big point was that we shouldn't make intergenerational debt that people will have to pay back in years to come, and that is sort of, I think, his indication saying we're not going to spend the $60 billion that appeared from nowhere with the major accounting error. So that was probably another thing we should touch on, is that there was a major miscalculation with JobKeeper. Yeah. So they almost doubled the estimated amount of people that were going to go into JobKeeper. So rather than being a $130 billion program, it's now dropped down to a $70 billion program.
Is that cash going to stay in the bank? The 60 billion or?
All borrowed is what he said today. He goes, every cent of the 70 billion that we're spending at the moment is all borrowed. So it's not ours to spend, was the indication.
Can you explain quickly what borrowing means, that we are borrowing this money from the future?
Okay, as I understand it, what the government do is they issue bonds, and through that issuing bonds, they sell that to people. So people buy the bonds and give the money to the government, but the government then have to pay the value of the bonds back, so they can do a bond buyback. So it's like selling shares in a company. That interest rate is governed by the Reserve Bank, and that's why the Reserve Bank interest rate is so important. But then it gets hairy, and for some reason the Reserve Bank are buying government bonds, and then I just get lost on the whole deal. So, but effectively, what's happening is that the government doesn't have the money now, so that they're selling off treasury bonds to businesses, to whoever wants to buy them, in order to get the money to pay the bills. I think that's when the Reserve Bank stepped in, saying we know that there may be a short-term glut in the ability to sell the bonds, so we'll step up and front the money. But then begs the question, where did that money come from? So it's a strange world where I haven't looked a huge amount into it. So what that would mean in an economy point of view, it would mean that we would need to find some mechanism of paying that back. So we would either need to reduce spending in the future or increase taxing, so increase income. So we've got no public assets to sell anymore, I don't think. So we've sold off Telstra, the electrical companies and everything like that. That seemed to have been where we got a lot of the big payoffs in the past. Mining boom was another sort of way that we were able to balance the books quite well for a number of years, but none of that is going to continue into the future. So we're looking at, as in a country, we're looking at decreased revenue. So the government is looking at decreased revenue. The imports are looking at decreased revenue. China is playing games at the moment, so they are now putting import tariffs on barley and coal, I believe. They didn't put a tariff on the coal, but they instructed state-owned coal power plants not to buy Australian coal. So they should be two pretty big hits. They're billion-dollar hits to the export market. Australian meat was also targeted. So all that sort of says that there's going to be less money being taxed in Australia from overseas sources, leading to a position where we won't be able to pay back that debt in the short term, and we're probably going to have to increase the debt in the short term just to pay the bills. So that's why they're sort of saying we're not going to spend that additional 60 billion.
And looking close, also tying into the future and more on an individual level, the super guarantee have had a big uptake. A number of people have taken on the opportunity to withdraw the 10,000 has been younger people. So what are your thoughts on how that's going to affect things down the track, or do you think it's been helpful for people?
If you're pulling the money out to pay your bills, it's not helpful, but it is helpful to survive. So that's probably a bad situation to be in. I think the long-term effect of you pulling out 10,000 out of your super now is close to, I think it's about 300,000 once you retire. So that means it could even be more. I'm not quite sure, but it's a significant amount of money, minimum of about 300,000. So you're going to have effectively, a house, a very cheap house in a lower area, less in your investment on retirement. So yeah, if people are pulling the money out just to pay the bills, then I understand it. But if you're pulling the money out to buy a car or to spend it on something that's not essential, I don't think it's a good move. Some people have been pulling it out to save up deposits for houses. Now, I don't think that's actually within the rules. I have heard of that being done. It won't affect the overall super industry. I don't think they're going to have any problems cash flow wise. They did say that they had the cash excesses there. But yeah, I think super's a thing. I mean, super's a whole issue that it's very neglected in Australia, considering it's such a large investment. I mean, you wouldn't pay 10% of your income to a company and then never look at it if it was any other circumstances. So super as a whole is poorly managed. I think there should be education around people who look at their super. They're looking at what they've got in their super. We had a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago. They were only like 28. They were looking to sort of see if they could put more money into super, and $100 a week extra into super, it basically doubled their super on retirement, which took them from about 600 to up to about $1 million, I believe, just sort of off the top of my head. So with super, once you get to a large balance, it's the earnings that's where you get most of the growth from. If you're looking to put money into super to grow and you don't get any earnings, you're never really going to get a decent value. And you've got to get your fund up to a level of, if you want to live comfortably, realistically talking about sort of 600 bare minimum, and you're sort of living at a okay level. But if you can get it up to $1 million, you could probably earn somewhere between 60 to 70,000 quite comfortably on your retirement, which is where you want to be. You don't want to be sort of working anything under that. So big issue in itself. I think, depending on what people use the money for, but I hope if they have pulled the money out that they then can work to get the money back in once it's once this is all over.
And that's what it was designed for. The government said that if you have lost your job or reduced hours, it's to keep you going and keep the bills paid, not to invest in new toys or whatever, video games, etc., and things like that.
Crypto, yeah. So I think half the problem is that I honestly think that the funding that's been given out has been an overreaction in a lot of instances.